Good evening and welcome to the October 17th meeting of Des Moines City Plan and Zoning Commission. I will read the rules and procedures. Number one, the Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Number two, applicant will be given 10 minutes to present the request. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. The applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed and the commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to remain germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for an approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or a member of the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. First, could we have a motion to approve the minutes from the October 3rd meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Or pass? Abstain. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the consent public hearing agenda. My understanding is that there are some members of the public that may want to hear this item. There's a request from Jumbo, represented by Shane Devick, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan, Arbor Masters, for property located at 3839 Delaware Avenue, and for a type 2 design alternative in accordance with city code to allow outdoor storage and parking areas to be located within the front yard, where it is required to be located in a rear or interior side yard. Is it correct that folks would like this item discussed tonight? Is there anyone here that would like to discuss it? Yes, okay. Then we will move item number 1 to public hearing. Do we need a motion to do that? Okay. No consent agenda then to approve, and we will start then with item number 1, which I...
Do we want to... And item number 2 has requested a continuance to the December 5 Plan and Zoning Commission. They had held their neighborhood meeting on Monday night of this week, but they gave their the people in the notification area a very, very short notice or heads up, so they had a poor attendance. So they have agreed to meet with the Woodland Heights neighborhood and some neighbors in November. So they are asking for a continuance to the December 5 Plan and Zoning Commission meeting.
So could we get a motion to continue item number 2 to December 5th?
I'll move, but I have a question, please. Can these neighborhood meetings be done by Zoom, or are they in person?
The city's neighborhood outreach guidelines do allow applicants to hold neighborhood meetings virtually, and that's what this applicant tried to do on Monday night, was hold their meeting by Zoom, and they found that it didn't work, so they are going to try to meet in person now in November.
Thanks, Bernie.
Okay, we have a motion to continue item 2. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes. Okay, we will start then with item number 1. Jillian will present for the city.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Jillian Summer with planning staff. Item number 1 is regarding the property at 3839 Delaware, requesting a type 2 design alternative to allow outdoor storage and parking in the front yard. The site is located to the west of I-235, north of East Euclid, generally in an industrial area. The site plan is required for a change of use. The previous machine shop has been changed to a tree service business. The business did move into the site and had some enforcement action to make them aware that a site plan was required. They were not aware of that requirement, so the enforcement action has spawned the site plan submittal. So the site plan is what is before us tonight. The use of the building for a tree service is allowed, and outdoor storage in this district is allowed as well. The existing building on the site is located towards the east, and there's a decent slope on the south side of the building. Typically, outdoor storage should be required to be located to the rear or side of the building. In this site, due to the location of the existing building and that slope on the south side, they have a physical constraint that any future development really needs to happen in front of the building. The applicant has proposed, there is an existing overhead door that faces Delaware Avenue, and there was some existing gravel surfacing in front of the building. They would be removing that gravel and replacing it. This is the site plan for new construction with a new paved driveway access and a paved area that would be used for both outdoor storage and parking in front of the building. The proposal also includes a privacy fence around the perimeter, a 6-foot-tall wood screen fence, as well as landscaping, new trees along the street frontage, as well as the west and south sides of the outdoor storage area. They have proposed a slightly enhanced landscaping along the north side to try to buffer further from their neighbor to the north, which is a residential use. Our staff recommendation is recommending approval based on those physical constraints of the location of the existing building and the slope. We believe that the location of the proposed outdoor storage would allow for future development if there were another building ever to be built on site to be towards the street, which would then have the outdoor storage in the rear as we would prefer. So staff is recommending approval of the item.
Thank you. What questions do we have for Jillian?
Could you go back and that site to the north? That is a house.
Yes, that's correct. So if you look at this landscape plan,
And that's a driveway that runs on that north side of the lot then? If you go back to that picture?
yes, there is a driveway that runs along the north side, and my understanding is that there is a shared access agreement across that driveway, that these two properties used to be owned in common, used in common, and so when there was shared usage, there was a singular driveway for access to both of the properties. So their parking for this building was originally on the north side of the building. They would continue to have that access easement, and parking would continue to exist as it exists today. This new site plan would add the new dedicated driveway and outdoor storage and parking area.
And the fence would go on the inside of those light posts?
That's correct, yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Is the applicant present? Please state your name, address, and you have 10 minutes to present, and then please sign in on that piece of paper to your right before you leave. Thanks.
Okay. Shane Devick with CEC, located at 2400 86th Street in Urbandale. I have read staff report. We do have agreement with it. We have adhered to all staff's requirements. I think Jillian did a good job summarizing the project, but if you had any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone opposed? Please come forward, state your name and address, and sign in when you're done, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Hello, Commission. I am Kirk Elmquist, homeowner at 3851 Delaware Avenue. The house to the north. Thank you. Our home is located directly north and adjacent to the 3839 Delaware property. Additionally, our home looks onto and faces the 3839 Delaware property. We took our ownership of our home in July of 2020. Our home is known by many as the Wood Mansion, formerly the Carpenters Union Hall, Mechanics Corporation offices, the Inn on Delaware restaurant, and was originally built for Franz J. Wood, who ran the Wood Brothers Stucker Company here in Des Moines. To say this house and property has history is an understatement. I will preface my comments with an acknowledgement that the City of Des Moines cannot affect civil issues or disagreements concerning the easement agreement between the properties. I simply want to share my experience and concerns with our neighbors to give you an idea of our struggles. I would like to bring attention to 2 items on the staff report and recommendation. Firstly, on page 2, number 8, zoning enforcement for occupancy without approval of a compliant site plan, showing the owners took roughly a year for a site plan to be proposed to the city, and that we have been dealing with a lack of care and respect from the property owner. Secondly, on page 4, number 1, stating that there is existing parking located north of the building, which is our property. And this agreement is secured through an access easement. I would like to notify you that the easement agreement does not permit parking. It simply allows for ingress and egress for vehicular and pedestrian traffic. To my knowledge, the city has not provided an opinion on whether the easement agreement allows for parking in the easement area. So for the report to say that existing parking is secured via an access easement is inaccurate. The legal opinion of our attorney is that no parking is permitted on the easement area by 3839 owner or tenants, and parking is not and has not been permitted. When they purchased the property, they knew or should have known our property is a residence. In my opinion, Jimbo LLC purchased a commercial property that simply does not work for their operations nor zone for their type of business activity. Because of this, our property and the easement access has been abused by Jimbo LLC and its tenant, Arbor Masters. Our property has not been respected and unfortunately has sustained damage over the past year that has gone unrepaired, even after being brought to their attention on multiple occasions. We bought this house understanding the location was adjacent to a light industrial area and knew there would be sights, sounds, and smells that most residences of Des Moines may not have to deal with. We never thought we would have to deal with a neighbor such as Jimbo LLC nor Arbor Masters and the struggles that they have brought. Our view of the cityscape was beautiful prior to Jimbo LLC taking ownership. Though we were happy to see a proposed driveway of their own, we ask that you deny allowing outside storage and require all business trucks, tree trucks, equipment, and trailers be stored inside. We also ask that you put in place as many safeguards to help protect our historic property and the surrounding area from being ruined by bad neighbors. As you'll see here, this is our house. This was the view prior to Jimbo LLC. Commonly have deer, a lot of green grass that we could see from our front door. Shortly after Jimbo LLC and Arbor Masters moved in, our property was used for their operations of their business. Like I was saying, there's a beautiful landscape or cityscape that we can see from our house. Unfortunately, this is what we've had to look towards now. Trucks, commercial equipment at all days of the hour. This was prior to their ownership. You can see that there is multiple green space over here. Now it is covered with mulch. This area right here, I'm trying to show on the left side, is our property, which they have damaged, and they have taken away grass. We came home to 2 large piles of mulch and tree debris that their company put. It took almost 2 months for them to finally push it off. Again, this is our property and not theirs. They ended up moving all the mulch all over the property, but still ruining our property. I'll try and show here, this is green space. I don't have many photos prior to their ownership, unfortunately, because I wasn't planning on our property being damaged by neighbors.
Your 5 minutes is up. Please go ahead and wrap up.
Thank you. I'll just share a couple more photos. This red line here shows the property line that is our ownership on this side, showing damage, again, to our property that they caused and still have not yet repaired to this day. I have many more photos, but I will leave it at this for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name, address, and sign in when you're finished. You also have 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Allison. I am another resident of 3851 Delaware. I'm Kirk's other half. I'm going to try not to repeat what was said by Kirk, but what I want you to know is that we purchased our property in 2020 from the local carpenters union. We went through a lot with the city to obtain the property, including rezoning it as residential. We knew enough about the property when we bought it that we thought it deserved to be once again inhabited, be cared for, be a restored home, and we have since been working to do that. As we learned more about the property and its original owners, we felt it was necessary to be added to the historic registry, and we have been working to gather the information for that as well. In 2020, when the property was purchased, the neighbor was Bosick Machinery. Nerman Bosick was a wonderful neighbor. He kept up the commercial property next door, planted flowers, mowed regularly, and ensured his property added to the aesthetic and stature of ours. Nerman was a polite, kind, and helpful neighbor that anyone would have wanted. We took care of each other's property when he was out of town or my fiance was out of the country for military. Since Nerman sold the property to Jumbo LLC, it has been the exact opposite. The new neighbors immediately demonstrated that not only did they not know where the property lines are, they disrespect and cause damage to our property regularly. This ranges from driving their heavy trucks over our curbing to placing machinery and tree debris on our property, having mulch dumped in our driveway, killing our lawn, evading paying for their portion of snow removal, to excavating the rear of our property without permission for what they thought would be their own personal use. Recent estimates for repair for the damage to our property is over $30,000. I hope that you can understand that to a middle-class family, that amount is untenable. We have requested repairs from the owners with no good faith effort on their part for over 1 year, now causing us to retain legal counsel to deal with this issue and incurring those additional fees as well. The neighbors, both Jumbo LLC and Arbor Masters, have had many opportunities to make things right. I could show you text messages and emails of us begging for communication about what is happening, sometimes on our own property. Mostly our communication goes unanswered or is met with a snarky response. I would like to bring attention to an item on the staff report and recommendation. On page 2, number 8, showing the zoning enforcement for occupancy without approval of a compliant site plan. Again, showing the owners took roughly a year for a site plan to be proposed to the city. As you can see from the enforcement photos, we have been dealing with an unsightly mess which has bled over onto our property. In June 2024, while my fiance was in Germany for military, we were contacted by a lawyer on behalf of Arbor Masters and accused of towing Arbor Masters employee vehicles off of their property. This ended up being the city of Des Moines performing enforcement of a court order. This further demonstrates that these neighbors take zero responsibility for their actions or inactions. Neither of these neighbors, Jumbo LLC or Arbor Masters, are local. Arbor Masters operates from Kansas City and Jumbo LLC from Davenport, Iowa. They have been absolutely awful neighbors. I would like to know what makes the city of Des Moines think that rezoning is warranted. What makes you think that they will be good neighbors now? What safeguards are going to be put in place to protect us so that we can continue to enjoy our home? Our property looks out onto theirs, and part of the reason we purchased our property was the wildlife, deer, etc., that are and were continually on the grounds. That is difficult to find in the city, especially on the east side of Des Moines. This will further destroy that feature. We look at a junkyard of debris, commercial equipment, and trucks. Outdoor storage is not currently allowed under the current usage of this property. Our opinion is that while we purchased a home in a light industrial area, we did our homework before purchasing this property, including the rezoning. This neighbor purchased a property that does not work for their business. It was not zoned for this business, and it is located next to a residence. They figured out late in the game that their do-whatever-they-want attitude was not going to work for us or with the city of Des Moines. We feel their request disregards our home and further deteriorates the beauty of the property and landscape of the area, not to mention impacts the value of our property. We would ask that you stay with what was required of this property previously and not allow outside storage at this location at all. Please consider what you would want next to your home when making this decision. So this is the property when the Carpenters Union owned it, and you can see across their property. Again, this is the mulch that they dumped in our driveway.
Ma'am, your 5 minutes is up is all. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience here to speak in opposition to this item? Anyone neutral? Okay, applicant, you do have 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
Again, Shane Devick with CEC, located at 2486th Street in Urbandale. I was not aware of these two neighbors disagreeing over this. We were to put together this site plan, we did, but it would seem that this site plan cures a lot of these problems. Right now, they share a driveway, gravel driveway. This site, to bring into conformance, they're putting a new drive-in, so they won't share that. They'll have their own parking. There is a 6-foot wooden fence around the entire property and enhanced landscaping to the north. So I would ask that you approve it per staff's recommendation. Thank you.
May I ask a question? How would you respond? We saw a slide with a property line in red, and you recall that image? Yeah. Talk about that, would you please?
The red line, where is that in relationship if you pull the site plan up? I'm not oriented with it. So this, I think to our north, there is an agreement between these two properties for that driveway, for the use of that driveway. Jillian, can you go back to the first one for the demo? I'm sorry, second sheet. There we go. Oops, that's all right. I think that red line may be to the north of us there so we have a north property line, obviously. Then north of that, we have an ingress-egress easement, so they can both use that driveway. I'm not exactly sure. Do you know where that red line is, Jillian? Do you recognize it? So to describe them going off of their property, that may be in that ingress-egress easement that we're looking at. They may have been. Okay. So, in response, I'm not exactly sure what that red line is. They shouldn't be trespassing because they have an easement up there. The work that was done, I'm not aware of that, or the damage, as these two have shared this ingress-egress easement. I don't have any particulars on that, but I would certainly think that separating the driveways, creating their own parking that isn't attached, putting up more landscaping between, privacy fences, all those sort of things will help to cure this disagreement that I really wasn't aware of before tonight.
Is this then a question of confusion? Nobody seems to know what, maybe the property owner that is still here could explain something along that line. It seems to be encroaching on something, and I'm trying to find out.
I don't,
There's a separate parcel that we purchased that is this sliver of land on their side of the driveway.
yeah, I think the parcel line is the heavy line there. So that,
And that
this
has
is,
no easement on that parcel.
Are we talking about the kind of real long skinny triangle of land north of
Yes.
the south property line? That's your property?
Yes.
And what about the parking to the right? Who can use that?
Slide that.
That is our property. They cannot use that. It is for ingress and egress only. They can come in and out with vehicles and pedestrian traffic, but there is no parking access on the easement.
Thank you.
One more question for the applicant. Yes. The area further to the north, off the screen, north of those parking stalls?
Yes.
Is that what they are accessing?
No, is that what, who is?
What is the applicant using this driveway for today? And will they continue to use it?
Right now, the applicant uses the existing driveway to get into their property and to park in those spots to the north of their building. And that's what they use that easement for right now.
Will they continue to use those parking spaces in this plan?
Well, we were required to use those or we showed them as part of our parking counts for the site plan.
have we been provided a copy of the easement? Okay. So I don't think we can tonight, I think the applicant I think our understanding as staff is that there was access and parking in that easement, and without us seeing the easement. I mean, when we do development review, we're at the mercy of the applicant.
Sure.
But
Right.
I think the short, I mean, I think the thing what's before the commission, the use is permitted, they've been under enforcement. This is their site plan to resolve the use. If in fact, I guess the one thing that would be useful to know is if they are not allowed to have this parking, then more parking would, and we've used that as a calculation, it's possible that more parking should be, like this paved area should be larger possibly, or more of it should be dedicated to parking. I think that's probably the answer, is less storage and more parking. I don't know that more pavement's necessary, but I think the question that's before the commission is, can this all happen out in front of the building or not? I mean, that's what's in front of us.
Thank you, Jason.
Just to clarify, can the outdoor storage, obviously the parking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I will close the public hearing and open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners and motions.
Well, I would, after hearing what Jason had said, it sounds as if there's a need to have a more study of what's going on here. So I would move to postpone or reschedule the meeting until that can be determined.
I'm in support of that. It seems like the applicant, nothing against you, but you didn't really know about this, and the city didn't completely know either. So I feel like all the parties need to come together before the commission decides something.
I guess I'm a little conflicted because if we take action.
Speak into your mic.
Yeah, good. If we don't take action and give some type of direction on where we're headed to allow parking and storage in the front yard, then the problem's going to persist on the north side where the easement exists. So the only way that this use of the property in question can park and store things in the front yard is for us to allow it. And the easement issues have to go away in a legal thing that I don't think we can get involved with. That they need to resolve on their own. But if the people to the south, is that right?
North.
North, do not want these people to continue parking in their parking lot, we got to allow parking somewhere, and the parking numbers have to show up, right? Because right now, you're letting them use parking numbers that aren't in their property.
Right, I think if the commission approved what was before you, they would need to add more parking stalls within the paved area.
Right.
And they would just lose outdoor storage area. They could also come back with an amended request down the road if they felt like they needed to add additional storage to compensate.
Does that make sense? Kind of?
But are you saying, like, if we were going to deny it, we should just deny it now, instead of continuing it? If we're not even going to allow this, why bother continuing it? I don't know if that's what you're saying.
Yeah, but by denying it, are we just,
Making the existing problem worse.
yeah. That's my issue. I guess I need help.
If the request was denied, they would have to figure out a way to put their parking and storage basically to the south of the building, or I don't think there's enough room to the north of the building.
If it's approved, Jason, then they'll be able to park to the north, right? Is that what you're saying? And then they'll be, like, will the neighbors be happier if it's approved eventually because the parking situation will get better?
If it's approved, I think, and I think Todd and I are in the same spot in that you could approve this, and that would allow them this paved footprint that is identified in the site plan, and whether it's outdoor storage or some additional parking, if could all happen there. We will ask the applicant to provide us a copy of the easement to confirm whether or not they actually have rights to parking. And if they don't, then they'll have to provide more parking down here. So I think that would allow it to move forward. The other would be you could continue it, let us ask for a copy of the easement, and we can come back and tell you what we think the easement says, and you can see it. I mean, it's either or. I think either process can work. It's up to you. It's what you prefer.
I have a process question. We make a decision, and then it goes to the next level, and do we have the ability to flag things to make sure they're addressed at the next level? I mean, can we put a little star around something and say the easement, I mean, because clearly we have a neighbor behaving badly, and it would be great to have the owner here who could answer these questions rather than somebody who can't, presenting the case. But it seems to me that the question for us is very clear, which is actually not related to many of the concerns that were brought up today. But I would like to see some of those issues, particularly the easement-related issues, addressed. But I'm inclined to think that moving the parking makes sense, and that's within our jurisdiction.
I think we're going to have to ask for the easement. So I think that's going to happen no matter what. So they're going to have to demonstrate that they have adequate parking. If we're going to allow somebody to have parking off-site, they either have to have a, recorded agreement. I mean, just in general terms, like when people want us to account for off-site parking, we ask for a copy of their, like lease to have it, or if there's an easement, so we can ask for the easement. And if they can't provide it, then we will assume that they don't have rights to it. And at that point, they're going to have parking on site.
And it sounds like the balance between how much parking is created and how much storage is created is going to be important, right?
That would be a
Except more
reason
of this
maybe
gets
to
contained.
continue it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, right now we have a motion on the table to continue. Should we vote on that? Do you want to keep your motion to continue?
Yes, please.
Okay.
What was to the next meeting? Was that, I didn't hear the.
Oh, I didn't specify any date. That would be fine with me.
Well, we either need to have a specific date, or it could be continued indefinitely, and at that point, the applicant would have to pay the notice fee, because we'd have to renotice it. So I think either is fine, but maybe start with 2 weeks.
Yeah.
November 7th.
Can you
Oh,
resolve?
okay, let's go, because we have extra time anyway, because the way it
November
lays out, let's do November 7th.
November 7, we have a meeting, right? Is that acceptable, Will?
Very much.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to continue to November 7th, please raise your right hand. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to item number 3, request from Life Change Church for review and approval of a public hearing site plan North Ridge Event Center Phase 2 amendment located at 4530 East 46th Street, and for the following Type 2 design alternatives. A, review of the denied Type 1 design alternative to waive the requirement to provide a pedestrian entrance on a trash enclosure. And B, review of the denied Type 1 design alternative to allow rock in parking lot landscaping islands. And Shauna will present.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Shauna Barron, planning staff. The item before you today is familiar. It is Life Change Church and Northbridge Event Center. This came before the Commission twice, once for parking along a street frontage, and then another one for expansion of parking along the street frontage. Both of those approved plans did include code compliance for the trash enclosure and for the lot landscaping islands. This is the site location that is familiar. The enclosure that was constructed was not constructed per the approved plan, and so now they are seeking a Type 2 or a denied Type 1 design alternative for the pedestrian enclosure. They're wishing to not put that in. And then the landscaping islands, they did have code compliance on both of their previously approved plans, but instead installed landscaping rock. And I have visited with the Forestry Division and have Shane here to speak about that.
Hi there, Shane McCullen, City Forester for City of Des Moines. So I was asked to comment on the use of rock instead of mulch. Throughout the city, in our different tree wells and different areas, we will have usually always mulch in there. And mulch provides a variety of benefits. It's got better growth, more nutrients, it breaks down any tree inside one of these constructed areas is basically on Struggle Street to start with. There's a lot of things going on. A parking lot like this is going to be full with salt and snow during the winter and pushed into these areas. So any kind of positive thing you can do to help them grow in these areas is beneficial. The rock, it's got a lot of surface area, so when it does rain, that's going to trap a lot of the moisture. They heat up a lot in the Iowa summers. Predominantly people want rock because it's less work, and that's why they put it in there. It's less maintenance, except you'll be spraying glyphosate or some other type of thing like Roundup on there because you're not going to have someone hand pulling these weeds, so now you're introducing chemicals to it. So that's part of it, the rock. It just happenstance with this, I believe the person applying for this used the Sci-Town as an example, and I happen to have the city forester from Ames on a visit with one of the landscape people from Sci-Town, so I said, it's just dumb luck that they happen to be there. And I asked them about it, like what happened up there, because up there they've got similar islands, but they've got some of it is mulch around the tree, and then some of it is rock. So I was kind of curious. Well, the landscaping department pushed for all mulch. That's what they wanted. The athletic department, probably wanting less maintenance and using chemicals, pushed for all rock, so it was a somewhat of a compromise, but obviously the landscaping person would have preferred all mulch because that's going to have a lot more benefits for growing trees in these locations. So.
Staff is requesting or recommending denial of the Type 1 design alternatives since they had appeared in both of their previously approved plans as being code compliant and then came about making changes during the inspection phase. So staff recommendation is for denial. Are there questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here? please come up, state your name, address, and you've got 10 minutes. Please sign in when you're done.
Hi, Robert Kramer with Northbridge Event Center and Pastor Steve Christensen with Life Change Church. As you heard when we were here before, Life Change now owns the land, the property. My wife and I own the building, and we built this building. Are we set up to do the slideshow?
We just need to, it's on the desktop, you just need to minimize and.
His is. We put his on.
Yes, it's that
Yeah,
PowerPoint to the left, right? Yes.
Thanks. And 4530 East 46th Street is their address there. So we felt like my wife and I wanted to build this building to help Life Change have a home, and then we're doing weddings and events to help pay for it. So we invested and it turned into a $4 million project, and feel like we have a beautiful building. It's kind of an industrial chic look. And so when I was, and how this all came about, I don't know if you've been involved in construction, there were dozens of decisions that were made inside and outside this building as we went along, and we felt like as long as we were complying with code, some of those had to be made, and then we'd have the architect adjust it and submit plans later. And that's what was going through my mind, dealing with our engineer, talking about these two issues. The engineer didn't bring up the fact that it's in the city code. So that's my mistake. We put in some of this rock, and we actually stopped. We put in one truckload, 15 tons, and we dumped the other load, and then found out from staff that, oh, hey, time out, this is not allowed. So it's sitting there kind of waiting. These other islands, about 2/3 of the islands, are waiting for this decision to decide. So the truth is, yes, we could go back in there and pick the rocks back out and put in mulch. But we felt like that this was, after going through a lot of compliance issues on this building, we felt like this is a very tedious thing that really, I don't think the city should be having an ordinance. It's really not something that the city should get involved in, whether we put rock or mulch. We'll talk about in a second why that is. But the first thing was, so here's our neighborhood. So here are the dumpsters at the hardware store down the street. Here are the dumpsters at the apartments next door. Here is an enclosure, and then here's like the come and go, has a nice enclosure, but almost none of them have any pedestrian entrance. This at the new Quick Star has an entrance, but it doesn't have a door, which is, my understanding, is required by the new ordinance. And then the kicker was the Des Moines Fire Station that was very modern, number 11. It's got an enclosure just like ours. And on the enclosure, on the pedestrian door, our site plan had it on there, and it was kind of a cut and paste from the architect, but it was actually shown on the wrong side and didn't have a door. It was just an opening. And so I didn't realize it was a code issue. And so, yes, I made a decision thinking, we don't need that. We're not going to use that. It was brought up by staff that the use of it that a pedestrian door would be easier to use. And so Pastor Steve was going to make comments. His wife that does the cleaning up at the event center, there's ours. And so explain to him a little bit just of why you think this is a better use.
Yeah, so my wife's 5'4", I'm 6'1", and she's not quite as strong as me. So the argument was, well, she needs to get on the side because if she tries to come from the front, it's really hard to get that lever. The problem is, it's actually harder if you've ever done it if you go in the middle. Because what happens is, as a shorter person, it continues to rise. And so therefore, she can't, if she starts in the middle, actually use enough muscle to get it to go up anyway. Not only that, but then it also squeezes the amount of space that she has with all the trash, and so can't even bring it in there. So it's much easier for her to pull a peg and slide a door and then come from either the front and just try to fling it up, because it's impossible for her to come from a side at her size, and most of the people's size that are cleaning our buildings, and try to raise that up from the middle or beyond. If you do any lifting, it's a fulcrum, it's not going to work. It doesn't work as easy. And so we feel like it's extra work for something that's not going to bring extra benefit. In fact, it's going to be even harder to put a door there, then try to squeeze some of the trash in, and then hope to somehow leverage that in the middle. And it just wouldn't work that way.
So that was our argument on the pedestrian door. Then you can see our pretty rock there with the mulch around the tree, but then rock. So we looked around the neighborhood at that. Here's down the street of Hubble. Almost everybody's using rock. And some little kind of homely, kind of like that. But here's some nicer properties where they've used it. Most of it using the river rock. We feel like the gray trap rock is a nicer look and goes with our industrial chic look. So here again, the come and go using rock and at their enclosure. I even took a picture of I was in Minneapolis last weekend. Here's one of the suburbs of Minneapolis, a high-end car dealership using the same rock that we're proposing. And here's a property my cousin built last year, and you can see part of the response was about heat. Well, this is like the islands at Northbridge, and you can see that really, even if the ends of this were mulched, you can see the heat is really coming from the concrete on either side. So, and again, we wouldn't do this way. We would put mulch around the tree, and so we just don't think that, that's a valid argument. If you can look in the background, there's a tree they planted at the same time, and it's surrounded by sod. Here's a close-up of it. But which tree, is looking better? That one, or this one? So I'm not saying that one is causing the other, one to do better. I'm just saying that there's not a direct correlation between rock and sod or mulch to help the landscaping. There's just other issues at play. And the bottom line is you got to take care of your landscaping. And obviously, being an event center that's trying to attract business and attract people to the church, we're going to try to take care of and have a beautiful landscape place. Staff also mentioned to me that that in her personal property that she had rock around a tree and the roots were starting to come up. Well, here's Costco, major retailer, and they've got mulch, but they still have roots coming up from their tree, and you can see what that mulch looks like. After a couple of years, it dries out and just part of it blows away. You're chasing it in your parking lot all the time, and you're replacing it. You're coming back and replacing it. So he brought up about Sci-Town. So because the staff had brought to me about Iowa State was making this recommendation, I just happened to be up there at Sci-Town for a meeting, and here is what they're doing. They're evidently going to put the tree there in the middle in the mulch, and then they put the rock like we want to do on the ends. So I thought, well, that sounds like a good solution. And maybe he mentioned compromise. I feel like the compromise of us putting the ring around the trees, and if our trees aren't quite 3 foot, or if it even needs to be 4 foot, that's fine. We can pick back some rocks and add some mulch and make a nice pad around the trees. We just really don't want to go pick 15 tons of rock out by hand out of the medians and replace it. So here's what ours looks like. We feel like we have a beautiful place. We just do feel like it's kind of overreach for there to be an ordinance, and I'd love for the P&Z just to stand up to council and say, hey, this is a unreasonable requirement. I'm also on the Board of Regents for the universities, and we had a presentation here a couple weeks ago about rulemaking. After the legislature passes a law, there's a lot of ways to make the rules then to enforce those laws. One of the last lines was, it has to be reasonable. And it just seems like we're getting unreasonable when we start getting to this kind of detail and minutia. So I realize we messed it up, and if you say we have to, we will go replace that. But I would ask you to waive those two little requirements and approve the site plan as it is. So thanks.
Thank you. Please do sign in. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this item? Anyone opposed or neutral? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and ask for discussion and motions.
My question, I was going to question the applicant. Were they aware of these requirements before they did this? When you came in front of us before, you were aware of and agreed to?
No. Okay. So our engineer put it on the site plan. We get to the site, and it's called sod on the islands, and the two landscapers we were working with, who work in Des Moines all the time, so they should have known too, They looked at us and said, oh, you don't want to do sod. It's going to burn up out there, and you're never going to keep it growing. We really suggest some like a trap rock. So I did it without following, without checking. I should have checked on it. And then on the pedestrian door, again, it was shown on our thing, but I didn't dream it was an ordinance. I thought it was just the architect getting a little crazy, and so.
We do get a little crazy sometimes. Any other discussion amongst the commissioners? Entertain motions?
The only thing, if I could offer to the commission, is just be mindful, these are both, I think you have already heard several appeals on the mulch before, so just keep that in mind. I don't recall if we've had an appeal recently on the trash enclosure requirement, so you either need to decide that there's something unique about the situation, if you're going to waive this, that maybe is different than other circumstances. I can think of the Paws and Pints, where they had long discussion and sharing of information about animals, dogs, go in the bathroom at the landscaping, and so that was a time when the commission did allow the rock, but obviously that was a unique circumstance. So if it's not tied to something unique, then I think we should expect the request to come before us again, or perhaps the commission is thinking it's a requirement that should be in place. So just anyway, that's my thoughts.
Thank you.
I have a question. Carolyn's question had to do with the trash enclosure, as I understood.
And both.
Did you include the other one as well?
I absolutely did.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because what the city forester has told us about, where these trees are planted, many of the pictures that we saw were in rock, bases, but they were shrubs, right? A tree isn't a shrub, and a tree really needs, a place to grow. This is really one of my, I'll be frank about this, really one of my concerns. We allow big parking lot spaces. I'm not going to cite chapter and verse. You can provide those, right? And the site plan calls for these trees and so forth. And even when there's a mulch and so forth, one concern that I have, and this is something I'd like to talk with you about, ongoing, what responsibility does this property owner have actually to maintain something that the property owner has agreed to do? Whether it's on his property, whether it's on, parking or whatever, if you don't maintain a tree in our weather, it's not going to be around maybe, for a while. And to allow this, which already we have been told by a municipal authority that is inappropriate, sounds to me like a big change. And, if we do it here, who else is going to come in and say, well, look what they did over there, why can't we do it?
Yeah. Well, and Greg, don't you remember Greg from Slingshot always hated these? It's hard on the trees, so we need to be supportive if we're requiring trees. Provide support areas, environments.
I'm just going to move staff.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? And pass.
Pardon?
Did you pass, or did you, how did you vote?
I'm opposing the motion to approve what was presented here.
No, it was.
No. Staff is denying.
Oh, thank you, that's right. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
We turned evil.
Yeah.
I think that was a unanimous yes then, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our items. Do we have any committee or directors' reports?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay.
No, I was looking at Bert to tell me, you should tell him something. No, and I don't,
Okay, thank you.